Howard Wang is a voice actor in both local animation and anime dubs, an ADR director, script adapter, audio engineer, and has recently moved to Los Angeles for a position in game development. As another leading member of SoundCadence Studio, I wanted to ask him about what he gets up to behind the scenes on dubs like Kemono Friends and the upcoming Thermae Romae. Not only that, but he's the adaptive scriptwriter for the dub of one of my personal favorites, Nichijou. I wasn't able to rewatch the entire show dubbed, but I did want to find out what was going through his head when it came to adapting some of the more interesting moments. Okay, so, Howard.
Yeah.
You are credited as the ADR script supervisor and assistant director on a lot of the SoundCadence projects.
Yeah.
And I think, as we discussed last time with Marissa, a dub passes through every SoundCadence founding person's hands before it gets finished anyway. So I was wondering, as the assistant, or like when you're the assistant director or the supervising writer, what is it you do?
Well, where to start? Well, the team at SoundCadence is pretty small. There's only like a handful of us, so so the reason why I end up being like script supervisor and like assistant director is because most of the time for a lot of like the recent things that we've done is because I'm also the engineer working like in the booth at the same time. So like the reason why like there's like quote unquote like script supervisor and like assistant director is because I'm also kind of doing those things during the session anyway.
Oh, okay, so it kind of just stands to reason that you get the credit of assistant and supervisor, I guess. Yeah,
it kind of depends. Like sometimes I will like either like when a script is like done being written, like I'll look over it before they send it off if I'm not engineering. That was the case with like Hells, I think. And then, but like in more recent cases when I'm also engineering, like me and the director will work together, and like if a line needs to be rewritten, like and like usually I'll have more of like a technical like input, I guess, because
is that technical in terms of like flat matching? Or?
Yeah. Because like on the engineering side, like I know exactly like, oh, like we either like need like this many or this shorter like amount of like flaps, or like tweak the line so it's structured in this way, and then like I'll provide that sort of context. And then same with like directing with like Kemono Friends, or like God, what else? What else did I do? Kemono Friends and like City Hunter and stuff. Like I would like, since
Shinjuku Private Eyes.
Yeah. Like since I was in the room, and like I've also like directed, and like I directed like Thermae Romae and stuff. Like it's a very collaborative process. We have the director, and they'd be like, oh, like what do you think? I was like, oh, we can try something like this, and then like we talk to the actor, and then so it's we all kind of like work together. So like that's why there's like a director, assistant directors. Like usually assistant director usually means like if the main director is out, that director covers. But like in this case it's not really like that, because like we're all in the room working on every session together anyway.
Okay, so it's kind of like a SoundCadence special version of assistant director.
Yeah, I mean it's closer to saying like co-director than like assistant director, but like it's really it's not that big of a deal.
Actually, speaking of the whole collaborative aspect, something Marissa mentioned last time is that yourself and Emily Fajardo are kind of the comedy specialists.
Oh yeah,
for SoundCadence.
Yeah,
and that's the reason that you were working on Thermae Romae.
Oh yeah. Like when we got the show to do, we were told to make it as funny as possible, and Emily is super funny. She does doesn't just do like the ADR writing at the studio. She also does like for like demos when they need copy for like just custom copy for people who want their demos made. She'll write them. She comes up with like some really good stuff. And she helped like co-direct with me like on Thermae, where like we'd be in the room together kind of.
Thermae Romae is a really...
Oh yeah, it's nuts.
I'll explain a bit. I've actually seen a bit of Thermae Romae because for some reason it's been available in Australia for a while in Japanese only from a label called Siren Visual. They pick up a lot of like kind of acquired taste anime.
Oh yeah.
And I did not ever think I'd see it again, let alone with a dub. So
yeah, I mean, I was pretty surprised to see like them just like asking for a dub for that show in particular. I'm like, all right. I'm like, oh, it's short, and like that makes sense. And like it's like this weird show, but then I watched it. I was like, oh, this could be really fun. Yeah, me, Emily, and then we also had our friend Kyle Ignazi, who who's also really really funny and a great writer in like the kind of like the theater aspect. He helped out with the scripts as well, and honestly a lot of the stuff in Thermae that ended up being in the final show, and a lot of it was just, it wasn't even written. It was just stuff.
Okay, so it was ad-libbed, or
it was like we would like get to that point in the session, and then it'd be like, this could be funnier, and then we would like talk to the actor. It was like, and then they either the actor would come up with something, or me or Emily will come up with something in the booth, and like maybe the actor will bounce off of that, and then we're like, oh yeah, that's really good. And because like God.
Yeah, I remember that clip that got uploaded to Twitter. The Thermae Romae dub is actually, for those listening, it's pretty far up. It's 2020. So it's gonna come out a bit after, I think, some of the other stuff. But there is a clip on Twitter of the dub so far that you can watch. And there was this part where I think it's Jim's character.
Yeah, Jim Fonda plays Emperor Hadrian.
Yeah, that part where he's just like,
I hope you hear me when I say, your unparalleled brilliance is exhilarating!
Yeah.
As the camera just like zooms right into him, and it's like he just starts shouting.
That and the whole like the innuendo-y thing he does.
You must come with me. Will you do me the honor of coming with me to Jerusalem?
Yeah. That and him like randomly screaming, those were not written in the show before like the session started. Okay, that was when we were recording with Jim. Was so good, and he was so good at like like the coming up with stuff on like funny stuff on the fly, and like collaborating with him was so fun.
I guess it's like kind of like more of a visual joke, because I think I remember what the Japanese line was. It was like, I'm glad to know that we certainly don't steal from other cultures, because like the whole premise of the show is that he's stealing Japanese bathroom ideas for the ancient Roman ideas. Yeah.
There's a lot of stuff that in the J, there's just like, that's not funny to say. So we just kind of just go with what was.
Was it just not funny, or not funny to Westerners?
It's a little of both. Where it's like in Japanese, Thermae Romae has like a very specific Japanese comedic style, where it's like pretty dry, and there's like some wacky stuff here and there, but it's more of like the kind of show where like you would sit there and just like
how are you guys gonna handle the that whole flat-faced slaves thing?
It was in the translation, so it's in the show.
Okay. So... Ooh boy.
I mean, it's we play it off pretty well. We do point out. I think there's a line calling it casual racism, so it is it is pointed out, and it does.
That kind of took me aback when I saw it for the first time, but like I guess maybe like for it to be in the J, it could be seen as self-deprecating when it's coming from Japanese speakers, but maybe a little less so when it's coming from English speakers.
Well, I mean, the director is an Asian guy, so if the dub director is an Asian guy who also helped write it, like, I think it's fine. I thought it was really funny. So,
but actually, speaking of funny, I noticed that Thermae Romae, it's an anime. It's got a lot of Japanese text. It was made in Japan, but it doesn't really feel like that anime shit, with characters with spiky hair and long transformation sequences and stuff like that. So, I was wondering, would this added sense of humor, right? Is it trying to feel like something that can stand on its own? Yeah, I mean, it's definitely... the goal of it was just to make it funny and not like anime funny. There's a subtle difference between like how... it's really hard to explain. I don't know. I don't know. It's just we just tried to play with it as much as possible and make it like as funny as we thought we could make it. Whereas like anime funny is like playing you're playing with a very specific set of pieces and blocks, and you can work with it and you can make it funny, but it's funniest when you understand it's in the context of the fact that it's anime. Looking at Thermae Romae for a distance, it's kind of minimalist. It's I'm not sure if it's Flash, but it kind of looks like something like Archer. Yeah. Thermae doesn't present itself in the same like anime way, so I think that the sort of comedy we're going for really lends to how it's presented. Yeah, it's kind of like everything's kind of like a cutout. Yeah, it's closer to like Western adult, like mature adult comedy shows, like Archer or like stuff like that.
it fits the style, and like I feel like if people were to watch it, they wouldn't. If they didn't know it was anime, it wouldn't really matter. Like it can be funny without it being anime.
I guess there's like a pseudo-educational part to it. Well, as pseudo-educational as you can get as like stealing Japanese bath ideas. Like I remember there's like when I saw it a few years ago, there was like bits of like educational text like alluding to the actual historical figures in the show.
Yeah, there are like little segments talking about like, oh, like this is the history behind like, oh, who Hadrian was, or like this is the history behind like this like whatever, like a strigil, like here's what a strigil is and what it was used for in ancient Rome. And there's just like little tiny tidbits that you're not gonna like learn too much.
I guess it's like kind of like Horrible History is the anime, or
yeah, a little, but it's a very interesting mix of weird stuff.
Of weird stuff. And actually, speaking of comedy, a very different comedy show that you worked on recently was Nichijou with Funimation.
Yes.
And how did that happen? Like they decided all of a sudden we're gonna dub Nichijou and we're gonna get Howard.
I wish I could tell you. I have no idea what made them decide to eventually dub it, because they released it subbed. First,
and that was a huge deal already because it hadn't been like,
because that was like
it wasn't like widely available.
Yeah, and then I have no idea why they decided to dub it, but I have no idea why they thought they would get me for it. Because at that point, I hadn't written like a whole show. Like I'd only done like certain like little things for like other shows here and there. So I had written for them before, but this is like my first like full show, like where I was the writer for it.
Because I'm not claiming to know anything about what the thought process was, but like there's a sentiment going around like the fandom that not just Nichijou but a bunch of shows are kind of like undubbable because of like the humor and the story is based so much in the culture. Yeah. That it just kind of, it doesn't make sense to dub them. Like I know Nichijou is one of them. The Monogatari series is another one. I rewatched bits of Nichijou recently with the dub. And yeah, I remember from all those years ago, like there were certain things that like I thought like, oh, okay, maybe they didn't dub it because they couldn't get this. Like I remember there was like a word game where like
the word chain game thing. Yeah, that that one was probably, so like when people talk about Nichijou, and like I did like Google it quite a bit when I first started working on it, and seeing what people thought about like what a dub, or like why they didn't dub it and stuff. And a lot of people seem to be like, oh, they must have just thought it was localizable or whatever. And I was like okay, like, and I was kind of like nervous going in. I was like, okay, because if there's a lot of like weird Japanese stuff that's like really hard to localize, like I'm not sure how well this is gonna go. But like honestly, like a lot of the stuff in Nichijou wasn't that hard to localize, personally, at least. There's a way to make it work for pretty much all of it, except that one scene when with them playing the word game, because it was this weird mix of like it was essentially hard coded in because they wrote down the words.
All right, yeah,
and it was set in
English.
It was set in a game format too. Like where like there were set rules for a game and there were visuals tied to it.
I think at the end the joke is that you can't use the character in that game because there aren't any Japanese words that start with that character. So.
Yeah. So in the end, it just kind of, those are like kind of things where it's like you just kind of have to use Japanese. Which like, not like I didn't try to adapt it, because like when writing scripts, like you don't always just have like the one line for the director to use. It's like you can write like these things called alts, where it's just pretty much you have like the line you wrote, and then like you have an alternate line and alternate options below that in the same cell and in the script. And I think for that one I had like one that was like I tried to make it work in English. And then I had like a line where it's like I made it work for like half the game. where like I tweak the rules like a little bit, where it's like, oh, you either start with the same sound or as the last like syllable or something, or like you start with like the same like,
because they use the characters. Yeah.
Or like you either start with like the same like letter of like last sound, or like the last two letters, or the last letter, something. So I made some line here and there where they tweaked the rules of the game a little bit to make it work in English.
I guess that would have been a little bit more forgiving, because I think a lot of it was internal dialogue, so there were no flaps to match.
Mm-hmm. Which like it would have been great, but then it just got to a point where I think it was like supposed to go to like from like cow into like tongue or something. Yeah, it's like it just would not work in English. So I was like, I made it work for like half the game, and then like it got to the point where it had to be in Japanese. I made a line about like, oh, she's using the Japanese word now or something like that, and like that had that as an option, and then I had another option where it was just straight Japanese, and then like it just came down to like what the director felt, and like then like Jeremy Krass, the supervisor, felt was like the best kind of way to go about it. But I put the option there.
Yeah, because I think I'm trying to remember what it was. Because I think it was kept mostly the same, like in terms of the words, like the actual words themselves, like.
Or just the Japanese
I think
word.
like it was the same.
Yeah.
For a lot of it. Yeah, and there were just added lines like saying, "Oh no, I can't do that because of the rule."
Oh crap! This entered an in. If I pass that over, I lose. Stupid rules. Okay, quick fix.
Yep. It's like when in doubt for stuff like that, it's just safest to go with what was in the Japanese. And luckily, with Nichijou, because of just how it's structured with like kind of like the short skits, like. If it doesn't land super hard in English, like it's one skit out of like 100 of them, so it's like it's fine.
Yeah.
So
and like Nichijou is structured in a very weird way. Like even when I watched it back in the day, it's like there's this poetry that just comes out of nowhere.
Yeah, just the running gag of Yuko doing the haikus. When we got to that point where Yuko pretty much like does a haiku where it's like, oh, standing in the hall, something, and then just like Mogami River, and then she says like Mogami Gawa, and she's like, I did a good amount of research, and I was just like, and people were not super sure why she kept ending it with Mogami Gawa, and like the reasoning I found was that it was just her trying to make her haikus sound like profound. And the Mogami River was a common topic in like traditional like haiku writing, like where like people would write about the Mogami River in like a lot of their haikus or something.
Yeah, but when Yuko's using it, she's looking
like,
for like,
this is profound. What are they talking about? Mogami River. Yeah, okay, that's what that is. It's the same way. It's just like, yeah, they just like, it's the same way in English where like I like to write haikus. Sometimes they don't make any sense. Hippopotamus.
That reminded me of like, I think it was like a joke on Game Grumps where they tried making haikus, but they always end it with "It's snowing on Mount Fuji" or something. Yeah, even though that's not 5 syllables.
It's not.
Just nonsense.
Yeah. Luckily, Mogami River fits the structure.
Yeah, because it would be Mogami Gawa.
Yeah, Mogami Gawa.
Japanese. Yeah,
it works just fine. So, like that was a joke that like it was essentially still the same as the J, but it kind of came down to like delivery, where like I like wrote like a little note in the side of the script. It's like, this is the context, like this is what Yuko's like trying to do. So like, I think like I wrote my own note, and it's like, so like she like this is like awkwardly said as she finishes out the poem.
It's kind of hard to like condense immediately, like you're trying to think of something profound, but you fall back on a cliche or something.
Yeah. So it just comes down to delivery, which Morgan LeRae Garrett, she's awesome, and she did such a good job.
Oh, actually, speaking of delivery, Nichijou, one of my favorite things about Nichijou, is that there's a lot of different kinds of humor, and like not all of it is based on like the linguistic trappings of Japanese. A lot of it just comes down to delivery, because they just say things that make no sense. I mean, because of the way the actors deliver it, it's the joke. But as an ADR writer, do you have knowledge of who is playing which part when you're writing?
Well, especially at the beginning of the show, because they haven't done it yet.
Like, of course, but
you have no idea. Yeah.
Are you like handed the results of the auditions, or?
I had to actively find out who was what, because Nichijou wasn't like a simuldub. So like simuldubs, you can just see every week what happens pretty much after like a week or two after you wrote your script. But like because Nichijou wasn't a simuldub, I couldn't see that. I couldn't find out who was who. So I actively went out. I was like, hey, like, because like for me personally, like I like to write with like the actor's voice in my head as I'm going through, especially for like for these such like distinct characters like in Nichijou. So like I went on my way to be like, hey, like, can I get like some like whatever you have done and see like who's what and like what they sound like, so I can have a better idea when I'm writing. And like that definitely helped with especially with like Yuko, and like I think Hakase too.
Yeah, because like Yuko has a lot of parts where like she does this really like deep voice when she's exhausted.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
You're so funny. Oh my god, Yuko's my favorite character in Nichijou.
Did you know much about the show before you even knew you could be working on it? Or
I saw a lot of like those little clips you saw all over the place on the internet. So like
like I think that's how it got popular. It's just like it's all just a bunch of skits, so it can get shared like through uploading short videos to YouTube, and the copyright algorithm won't hit it. So.
Yep. But it's like I saw this, like everyone's seen the scene where, you know, the principal fights a deer.
Oh yeah,
there was the part where Mio fucking body flips a bunch of people for like, seeing her art and
when
stuff.
Dojinshi gets
and then there's like everyone's seen the gif of like Yuko like with a pencil, like her mechanical pencil, and she like taps the wrong end with her thumb, and like the pencil stabs her in the thumb, and then she like explodes.
I think there was like one skit where it was like Yuko and Mio go to an amusement park and Yuko loses her wallet.
Yeah, and then she has like that face.
Yeah, and someone just they edited that whole scene. There's like every single shot where like it cuts to Yuko with that face. It just starts playing Mad World.
Yeah.
Find it hard to tell you, I find it hard to take when people run in circles.
Stuff like that is what made, when people say like, oh, Nichijou's just, you can't adapt that. I'm just like, so much of Nichijou's humor is like visual.
Yeah.
And like just kind of ingrained where like it doesn't super matter what they're saying. What they're doing is what's funny. And like when it comes down to writing, that makes it honestly super easy, because like the part where, you know, that part, the amusement park where they're just, Yuko's doing that face, like they're not saying anything. Like that was the easiest thing ever.
No, the easiest thing ever for you guys was probably that whole silent skit where they're trying to build the house of cards.
Yeah, that was
just music.
There's not even reacts. It's just music.
Oh god, like I was thinking like there'd be a big controversy if the dub like tried to do something with that.
Yeah, but I think because like when I first started the show, they were writing the show, they told me to like stick with it closer to the translation, because like I think it's just like people, because the show's like older, but like it's so many people love the show, and it's like so established already. It's just like don't mess with something that clearly already works like as much. But there were some parts that I definitely had to mess with to make work.
I think one of my favorite ones was it was like in one of the last few episodes where Mio sees Sasahara has her arm locked with the tsundere girl.
Yeah.
And then she like goes on this
just
like
booking it
sprint through the city, and she's like shadow boxing and like jumping all like walking in between trains, like moving trains, and it's like, and like every now and then like Yuko will shout Mio-chan.
Mio-chan! 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 Mio-chan!
Yeah.
And then like she'll do that several times, and then Mio jumps into the river where she flips it and she says Chamio! In the dub it was just like articulating the word Mio differently every time. It's like Mio! Mio! Mio!
Mio! Mio!
And then when it came to the Chun Mio, it was
Mio Mai!
Well, it's just because like when she's running and like she's just yelling her name, like the punchline there is like she's just yelling her name weird every time.
Yeah.
And so like I think they Morgan did a great job there. And then like that one big part where it's like does like the whatever the Chanmyo thing was like, which is not funny in English, nor would it work in English.
Yeah, because you guys hadn't used honorifics in the dub up to that point, so yeah.
Yeah, so it's just like, okay, she's very surprised, and she keeps saying her name, Mio Mai. Like that's.
Yeah, it's kind of like a linguistic thing, because like in the Japanese it has reverse in the honorifics, and Mio Mai is kind of like a English pun on a Japanese name. So
it's a pretty close English equivalent. I was honestly, that's one thing I was like, it's like a very small line, but I was pretty happy with how that came out. Yeah.
Oh, Nichijou, it's such a weird and funny, but like kind of heartwarming show at times.
Oh,
because like even like taking that skit where like she's just running through the city doing all this ridiculous stuff. As soon as it's all over, it's like yeah, I've come to terms with the fact that the guy I like is going out with someone else, and it's like that was played totally straight.
Yeah.
And like I kind of appreciate that.
There's a lot of heartwarming stuff. Yeah.
Like, how was it kind of reading those moments of the shows where it would go from like really, really funny and absurd to like kind of grounded and genuine?
Honestly, it wasn't too big of a jump for me personally. I don't know. It's like, I don't know, the show just did a really good job of just knowing what it was. So like, I honestly didn't have to mess with it too much.
Yeah.
There were some points where like, you know, just translation wise, it just like didn't make super amount of sense. So just tweaking it like and looking at like what they mean and like about like what they're saying. Like taking what they're saying and like finding what they mean. Yeah. And then like retooling it so it sounds better in English. Like I wasn't I wasn't making anything up for the character. It was just I was just making it sound or like writing it so it sounds more like what they're saying in English. I don't know. And like sometimes like there would be certain points where like stuff would be retooled just a little bit just to make more sense. Because I can't think of a specific example, but like there were some I think monologues, especially with like I think with like Nano and Hakuse's arc. Especially Nano's arc. There was like this one point where Yuko says something to Nano. It's like, oh, like, you know, you're you, and that's fine. Like that's all that matters. I think the translation said something a little different, but something just kind of in the same sort of idea.
Yeah, like it's kind of weird that like Nano is probably the most normal character in the show despite being a robot.
I love Nano. That when I think of like the heartwarming, like just feelsy stuff, like it's just Nano's whole arc is like is like you once you watch the whole show, it's like you kind of realize like, oh, is Yuko the main character? Is Mio the main character? It's like, no, I think the main character is actually Nano.
Yeah, because like she's kind of the one who brings everyone together because it's like she's the one who wants to go to school so badly. And then they all get to know each other. Yeah.
Well, it's just like, because like Yuko and Mio, they're kind of like messing around. They got like their normal things that they're doing, their ordinary lives that they're living with. And like Nano, they just, I don't know, brings the whole arc together. And I love Nano. She's great. The thing about Nichijou is like they have like their like structured jokes they put in the show itself. But like, just for the sake of like keeping things like entertaining, keeping things flowing, like, entertainment wise and comedy wise, like in the show, like I would like the challenge of writing each show wasn't necessarily like adapting the jokes themselves like from Japanese to English. It was finding stuff where there wasn't really anything super entertaining to like that they were saying, and just putting stuff in there that was interesting to keep the watcher like kind of like engaged, like the viewer engaged as they kept going. So like one example that I can think of right now, because I haven't seen the whole entire dub of Nichijou yet.
Some writer you on there.
I mean, there's like it's 26 episodes. And I wrote the whole thing. It's fine. But like, so like
you've
an
practically
episode,
seen it already. So.
Yeah. Well, in the first episode, they so like when they introduced Sasahara and they're talking about his goat and like saying it's like, oh, like it's not okay to ride a goat to school, and there's like these couple girls that comment. It's like, oh wow, that's Sasahara. He's the goat guy. And then one girl was like, oh, and I thought he was the greatest of all time.
Oh.
Where it's like, because I thought he was the GOAT, which is like, goat, it's such a like a little thing. And like in the J, it was just like, oh, I thought he was cool or something.
Oh, I thought he was cool, yeah. Like,
yeah, where it's just like.
Yeah, that's always good where it's like, there's meta, but it is technically the same.
Yeah, where it's the same idea, but I just threw in just a quick little subtle meme. That like if you caught it, great, but if you didn't, it's the same idea.
Because I was gonna say like when the Hell's dub was coming out, I was wondering like how much meta would play a part in it because of the actors involved. But when it came to like Lawrence being cast as the Masako Nozawa character, and it's like, I mean, this still works because he sounds like he's playing the part of this kind of weird
Minnie
dorm
Mouse
lady
thing. Yeah.
Oh yeah, Minnie Mouse. Yeah.
That like the kind of cool little like callback or whatever, like the in jokes or whatever was cool, but like he just legitimately like fit the character. It was such a weird, kooky kind of like movie anyway, that like his like he just had put in like a really fun, interesting performance for it.
That movie, like, there have been like fans who have liked this movie for years who have commented on the video that we did about it. It's like, wow, I can't believe this film's finally like going to be popular again. It's like,
yeah. I mean, popular. Yeah. It definitely got more attention than it did, because I never even heard of it before we got to work on it. Yeah, which like I know some people I know some people had watched it before, because like Chris Guerrero, I think he watched it before. Then he got to audition for it and got to be in the movie, which was like, I thought that was super cool.
Yeah, Chris Guerrero, is he the only male actor in the Kemono Friends dub?
Other than the Zookeepers, yes, he is.
Other than the Zookeepers, yeah. The only male named character.
I think he's the only male actor in general, because in the J, they didn't have an actor for the Black Cerulean. Like when we got the materials from Japan, the creature sounds for Black Cerulean weren't in there, so we either had to make our own sound effects or get an actor to do it and like modulate his voice.
Okay, so they didn't provide the Black Cerulean sound as part of the vocal track.
Yeah, that was something we had to figure out, like when we when we were like time coding and like writing the script, like we didn't have the materials, like the MNEs, so we had to double check. And like once we got them, and they're like, oh crap, like we have to get an actor for that, so we had to list him as a character and everything.
Yeah, he was a fan of the show, wasn't he?
Yeah. We were trying to think of like, oh, we need to get someone who's really good at creature sounds, and like Chris had just been like tweeting about the show just on and off. I was like, let's just get Guerrero again, because like I also love just like, because being a fan of like anime and stuff, like I like knowing a bunch of people who are fans of stuff, like I love. It just means a lot more to like if someone can do the job and they love the show that they're working on. Like I love just giving people that chance.
Yeah. Actually, that's kind of something I didn't really consider before about SoundCadence, is that yourself, Marissa, Amber, Emily, you're all compared to okay, I'm gonna sound like an asshole calling people old in the industry.
I mean, there's the veterans, there's the old guard. Yeah,
the old guard, people who began doing like radio or theater, and that's how they got into anime ADR.
Yeah.
You guys probably liked. Well, there were some like older people who liked anime before. Like I know Crispin Freeman watched anime before getting into it, but you guys. Actually, that's the other thing, is that Crispin Freeman and Stephanie Shea have said, like, I liked anime watching growing up, but I didn't like dubs, because understandably at the time, there weren't that many great dubs out there.
Yeah.
As far as you guys go, you guys kind of grew up appreciating anime, and also maybe appreciating some of the dubs that went with them. So,
yeah.
This might be a weird question, but you're bringing your skills to anime ADR as a writer, an engineer, also a game dev.
Yeah.
But are there any anime dubs in particular that inspire you? Like I know voice actors from all parts of the industry often say that like people like Mel Blanc or directors like Andrea Romano and their work inspires them. But is there any like specific anime dubs that you look up to as like something that you'd like to, I guess, meet the level of quality of?
Yeah. I mean, yeah, like what you're saying about like, people back in the day, they didn't have a lot of good anime dubs to go off of. Like there was Cowboy Bebop and like some other stuff. But like even back in the day, like there's some of the stuff was so good. Like Cowboy Bebop, yeah, and like kind of that same era was like, I love the Outlaw Star dub. Like, oh my god.
Oh yeah.
Like it was so good. And then. But like, yeah, like similar, like you like what were you talking about, like people like the younger kind of like crowd coming in, like growing up, we had a lot more just opportunities to find like good dubs to watch, and just conventions were getting kind of like bigger, and we went to a lot of cons and stuff.
Conventions, those things that are in America.
Yeah. Well, just I remember back in the day, like going to cons and like going to like the voice actor panels and like them talking about like how they got in the industry. And then like I remember like some points like people saying that like, oh, the only people who liked anime beforehand and got in were like Caitlin Glass and Greg Ayres. And I'm just like, wow. So like there's no people who they're like fans of anime beforehand except for like a couple, but now like a lot of people working in it because we just grew up on it and grew up on dubs and just got into the field. And there's just so much more now than there was back then. Like Funimation would do like 4 episodes every couple months for like a handful of shows, and now it's now it's like this entire shows every season. But in terms of like dubs, I really love like Outlaw Star I mentioned, because they characterize it so well.
Yeah, like,
and then,
like I haven't actually seen all of Outlaw Star, but like from the episode I've seen, it's like like honestly it feels very at home on the platform that it was broadcast on in the West, even though it probably wasn't intended for that platform at all. So
yeah, I mean it was like a Toonami like staple like back in the day. Like I'm really sad. I'm honestly kind of sad that it didn't get as many reruns as like say like Cowboy Bebop or something. I think it got like maybe a year back on like the new Toonami, but yeah, when it got like HD'd. But like there's that, and then God, I love the Baccano dub. Baccano's great. Yeah. It's a great example of an anime dub that just like doesn't sound like anime. It just, if you close your eyes, it sounds like a period piece of like of that time. Like
I guess that's kind of the point. Yeah.
It just sounds
of the show.
Yeah. Like the accent work.
Accent work especially, and that's, well, I can't really speak because I'm not a Japanese speaker, but when it comes to the accents in particular, that actually just becomes a narrative device, because they have that flashback episode where all the European refugees are on that ship and they all have their accents intact. Then you jump to present day. Some of them have lost their accents, but the villain has kept hold of his accent because he's still bitter about what happened back then. It's like, well, that's like a whole dimension that gets added.
Yeah, it's so good. Like, oh god, like just Baccano dub is goals. Like that's
goals.
Like yes, there's that, and then there's God, and then
I was gonna say like Shinjuku Private Eye is kind of, it's not really like Baccano because it's not set in America, but it's kind of that same kind of mystery action show with like really like slick characters. Yeah,
the dub for City Hunter it's just a really cool action flick, and like being from like the 80s, it kind of has like that, it's like that 80s style with like a modern feel. So like working on something that was like old but like new, and like trying to get like the tone of that. I think that like Amber did a great job directing it, like making
it's like
it sound modern but like classic kind of at the same time.
Yes, it's kind of bit, I've always found it hard like writing our videos when it comes to talking about like the tone of a dub, because like obviously some of that is implicit to the original Japanese script, and so obviously if you adapt that well, then some of the tone should come through. But like, is there something else? Like, is it like vocabulary, delivery?
I mean, there's definitely different styles. Like the style of acting used in like City Hunter is different than like Kemono Friends, because Kemono Friends is like it's kind of like it's kind of like a kid's show, where it's like you know, it's a lot of, you know, the classic anime crowd watches it, but like a lot of kids enjoy it, especially like since it's come out like in America, and like I'm seeing like the number of people showing it to their kids and how much they love it, and it's like great. And it's like we went into the show, like the dub of the show, like okay, like this, because like there's educational segments, and then like it's pretty lighthearted, and like there's like some dramatic stuff in the end, but like this is very much just like a kids show-esque kind of show, like, and just kind of going from there. And like we would inject just like kid show like esque kind of things where they just like where we just crank up like the script a little bit just to make it more entertaining.
Because I when it comes to like we recently did a video on anime dub censorship. A really fucking long video. Jesus.
It was a great video. I watched it. It was great.
Thank you. One thing we brought up is the idea, or one of the things that I wanted to write in, but I think got cut for time because it was way too long, was the idea of looking at things on a macro micro scale. So like on the micro, you're trying to make sure that like the lines are the same, but they're saying the same lines basically. But on the macro scale, you need to make sure that like the story beats, the character motivations, they're accomplishing the same thing, which is why this might sound like blasphemy to say, but when it comes to the 4Kids dubs of Yu-Gi-Oh! And Pokemon, what they did in Japan was to be merchandise powerhouses for like really successful properties, and like they changed a lot about those shows in the West. Like there's some things that even I don't like looking back on Yu-Gi-Oh! Especially, but like it did the same thing. Like the Yu-Gi-Oh! Card game was absolutely massive when that show came out.
Oh
like,
yeah. And like Pokemon games and
yeah, but the thing is that I can't say the same for One Piece, because that was not really in the same vein of like a merchandise powerhouse like Yu-Gi-Oh! And Pokemon were. It was very much a serialized, pretty dramatic and violent show that had like some silly aspects, but it wasn't really like, it wasn't something that you could extrapolate the kind of, buy the toys thing. It was more so like, tune in next week and see what happens to these characters as they go through hell and high water kind of thing. And so when it comes to like the macro and micro thing, you could kind of say that Yu-Gi-Oh! And Pokemon at least left a better impression in that regard than like say One Piece. And so even like something like Kemono Friends, like trying to make it more like a kids show, or Thermae Romae trying to make it this like absurd comedy, changes kind of achieve that macro goal better than sticking completely straight, because playing it too safe kind of is misrepresentation in some regards.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely, I talked to Merce about this, especially when we were working on it, but like a one-to-one Kemono Friends dub, like if we just pretty much read the subtitles and just tweaking it to fit flap, like it wouldn't have like you mentioned, like accomplished that sort of like that macro, that goal. Like that's why like I feel like it is good to take those sorts of liberties to hit like the idea of like what the show should be to a Western audience. But like same with Thermae Romae, where it's like if we did it one-to-one, if the goal was to make it a comedy show that appeals to a Western audience, like it wouldn't have hit that goal as well as it could.
I guess the problem with that approach though is that some people have different ideas of what the macro is, if that makes sense. So basically, they have different interpretations of what is the most important part of a show that needs to be preserved no matter what. Yeah. And that's where there's going to be disagreement and stuff like that. But
yeah, I mean that's why Kemono Friends, like it wasn't a full on like kid show dub. Like it was still like we understood like there's like the audience that the general anime audience that and that cult following of like the adults and like young adults that love the show, but again there's also
it's like
this is also a show that's great for kids, so it's kind of like finding that balance between like, oh, this is kind of just like a kookier dub.
Yeah, because it's weird because we talk about director's intention, but I think Kemono Friends got way more popular than even the creators of that show thought it was gonna get.
Yeah. The anime kind of took off in Japan, which
and it's like it was supposed to be like part of a bigger like mixed media thing, and like the anime is kind of like the main thing people talk about nowadays. Like there was like a video game and I think like a manga, but like those are certainly like known, but they're not as popular as the anime, I think. Like,
oh, they're starting to like kind of rebuild to that point, because like they've got like a couple more games. They got the second season, which was the second season, and then like they've got like the they've got like
there was a controversy about Kadakawa and the original director, and a lot of fans of season 1 aren't very keen of season 2, and like, I don't know, I haven't seen them, but Marissa really likes both, so and she's like one of the biggest fans I've met, so I'll take her word for it.
Like one of the little bits I've seen of the season 2 I've liked, so it's like it's fine. And then they've also got like the new like games coming out, like the mobile games, and like there's like a Switch game or something coming out for Kemono Friends, which like they're rebuilding that sort of empire I think that they wanted to do in the first place. But Kemono Friends.
Just won't recapture the magic of Chapter Park.
It'll be fine though. I'm just excited to see more and see if we can.
You hoping you guys can work on more of it, or?
I mean,
well, I guess that'll be seen.
I would love to get the dream team back together, but that is not up to us. So, but I'd be happy to do it.
It kind of sucks that like so much of it is out of the hands of people who want it. Like,
Yeah.
when actors ask at a convention, will you come back for season 2 of this? It's like,
Actors are the last person to know. Like,
yeah.
and then before then is like the director and the writers are usually like the third or second to last to know. It's a lot of.
I guess, like, from a fan's perspective, it would make sense that the people who would know most about what's happening with the dub would be the people who work on the dub, but
Nah, man.
not exactly, because it's got to be licensed first. So
Yeah, they tell us what to do. We're just all right, cool, so we'll do it.
yeah, and thankfully with Discotech, they get you guys a lot of cool projects.
Yeah, I mean, we love those guys, and like they,
Thermae Romae.
they're really cool because like they are just a bunch of people who love anime and like they're big fans of like a lot of different things, and like we're like the same way where like, you know, we'd come in like for a show like Kemono Friends, and like Marissa's like just conveniently a giant fan, and like, you know, it's we just, you know, it's just having that sort of like that same level of sort of like passion is just really, really cool.
Marissa said that you were even more strict with lip flaps on Kemono Friends than she was, which
Oh yeah,
I think is saying something, because Marissa is very picky with flaps.
I mean, well, like it's just seeing it from like a different lens, because like when you're writing and like when you're engineering, you might as well be looking at different footage, because like seeing the flaps for engineering is a lot more like particular. Going in, like I had a lot of revisions for the Kemono Friends script.
Yeah, especially because like the Kemono Friends dub flaps, they move in a really weird way. Like, this is something that I also talked about with Marissa, where it's kind of like a very like even movement, open and shut.
It's very like warpy. It's not like the mouth just kind of like warps around and then closes.
Yeah.
It's really weird. Yeah.
I guess there's the way to say it is how to interpret the flaps, because one thing that's been making the rounds recently is the Kemono Friends bloopers.
Yeah, I mean...
I got you, fam. Lucky Bee spoke? Nani? Hey girl, how you doing? My name's Prairie Dog.
And when it comes to anime bloopers, the funniest ones for me are the ones that sync perfectly anyway.
Yeah, I mean, God, those happen, and they can work for just various different ways.
Chungus, there you are.
It sounds like a big Chungus to me.
It's all thanks to Chungus.
Hell yeah, I love Chungus. You sure are big Chungus.
It's either a lot of them were just the actor just messing around in the booth, and I just happened to record it, and I would put it into the mouth and into the flaps as best I could.
Yeah.
And if it worked, great. If it didn't, then like if it's close enough, like I'd make it like close enough and it'd be great. Some of them were like intentional, where it's like, oh man, wouldn't it be funny if she just said this? Like, hey, can you say this real quick? And it'd be hilarious. Like, I think one of them was like, God, Michelle as Golden Snub-Nosed Monkey. When she first showed up, I was like, you know what fit in those flaps? Hey, it's me, Goku.
Hey, it's me, Goku.
That's so unfair.
So it's like,
yeah,
hey,
yeah,
Michelle, can you
because
say
it's the
hey, it's me,
monkey, yeah.
Goku? Because she's some Goku
God.
like monkey design, so it's just like great.
Yeah, from like Journey to the West and stuff.
Yeah.
You're right. It was a Chungus.
It's like that one was like an intentional one, and like others were like, God, there was that bit where Amanda's just listing off like a bunch of different songs that they're about to sing.
It's called Big Chungus. It's called the Cha-Cha Slide. It's called Despacito. It's called I'm on a Boat. This is the end of my career. Now, time for our next song. All the single ladies.
Like, the fact that so many of these bloopers sync up perfectly, it kind of suggests that there could have been like a bunch of ways the lines could have been written, and
Yeah.
thankfully you guys didn't use Big Chungus in the actual show. But
I mean, watch Thermae Romae. Anyway, well, like so,
Okay.
like the flap. Well, especially the kimono flaps, because like flaps you don't do 1-to-1. Like you go closed, open, closed. There's not one word, one syllable. Like it can be interpreted different ways, and like it just kind of depends on like what looks the best. Because if you do 1-to-1,
that's like what's really interesting to me is like it's not really the science of interpreting flaps, but like the craft, I guess.
yeah. Well, it's like, so like there's a blooper that didn't make it into the final reel, but like there's a bit where like the actress for Kaban was just messing around, and like there was a line
It's
where
dubstep time.
It's dubstep time.
yeah, oh my god, that. But like there's another one. There was one line where like the flaps were just like chunk, 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 and it was just really, really slow. Obviously we don't have them talk really slow to fit 1-to-1, so we like put like multiple syllables within one flap, and it still looked fine. It still works. And like I think the line was like, oh, I wonder what Beaver's doing, or I wonder how Beaver's doing. And like there was a bit where there was a blooper that didn't make it in where Kaban's actress was just like talking really slow, like I wonder how Beaver's, and she was matching it 1-to-1 with like per syllable per flap, and that stuff just doesn't work. And it's like it's a fun blooper, but it's also a great example of how like 1-to-1 flaps don't work, and like it is really up to like interpretation of like what fits where.
I think like size dictates the volume, I guess.
Yeah, I mean there's plenty of times where it's just like, you know, the read can be great and like everything about the read can be great, but it's just like, oh, their mouth is a little bit bigger than that, so just say it with a bigger mouth. It's kind of hard to explain, but it's just, like, you know,
like I've seen sometimes like 2-syllable words said in a motion that is just like closed, half open, open, half open, closed. So like visually it just looks like it should be 1 syllable, but I don't know, it's weird. Like Richard Williams, who actually he recently passed away, but Richard Williams, who was the animator who directed the animated parts of Roger Rabbit, his animation textbook brings up a lot of things about animating dialogue, and you guys obviously don't have any control over that because it's ADR, but he does bring up that like when it comes to starting words with like loud sounds like bang, you should start closed, then go to fully open, like snap right wide open, and then just ease back closed. Yeah, so there's even stuff when it comes to the expression, and like with anime, it's pretty limited because it's usually just 3 flaps you can use to express. Yeah, I mean, but a lot of the times they do that where it goes from completely closed to completely open, and then going from there. A lot of the time that's something we have to keep in mind, like because like the number of times where like we was like, oh, like say that a little faster, because like if you're starting a word too slowly, I don't know, it's a lot of like little tweaks here and there just to be like slaves to the flaps. So it's like, I don't know, it's hard. It's all up to it's everyone's personal preference. Like that is something that there are different modes of discourse, I guess, when it comes to that, because in Japanese, when the Japanese dub anime, a lot of the time the flaps, there'll be a couple of flaps at the start of the line that just don't match. Oh yeah. Sometimes like there'll be one flap at the end of the line that's missing, like that kind of stuff. And so people will say like, oh, the Japanese don't match it exactly, so why should the English dub match it exactly? You should just focus on getting natural reads and not worry about the presentation. Here's the thing, you can get both. Yeah, I mean, it takes a little more time and a little more like finagling, but like you've seen good dubs before that fit the flaps pretty much perfectly, so it's like it's possible to get both. There are definitely, it's tough because there are definitely directors that prefer one over the other, but like in like a pinch. But yeah, I guess and especially when it comes to that, there are ways that things can be like finagled when it comes to like closed mouth sounds, and like if it starts with a then you can start before the flap opens, and like even something that Richard Williams and even I think one of the Bang Zoom audio engineers mentioned is something that is there like, do you offset it by like 1 or 2 frames? Because like I think there's like a slight disconnect between when the eye registers something and when the ear registers something. Yeah, I mean, the number of times where like I would line something up, it's like, okay, the flap starts right here and the waveform is right there, and I'd put it and it doesn't look right. It just, and then you just from there you finagle based on like what looks good to you. So like it's unfortunately just like there's no like textbook technical way for everything to work. It all depends, and just all depends on the individual and like what they think looks good. But like in terms of like balancing like good flap matchage, good flap sync with a natural read, I was wondering kind of like where you kind of if it was a spectrum, whereabouts would you be? It honestly, it kind of
depends. Like, well, first of all, like engineers that like I've gotten the chance to like engineers at like Funny, like in other places, like they are magic. Like I'm not nearly as good as they are, but like they are the amount of like stuff they finagle to make things work, like timing wise and like flaps wise, it's nuts. Without them, flaps would not work at all. But like, so like, depending on the project, I always try to get like flaps as good as possible. So like, say for Kemono Friends and like City Hunter especially, like I really, especially like Kemono Friends, because the J flaps were kind of all over the place. Like me and Marissa kind of had this goal where it's like, we need to make these flaps look awesome to like show that like these flaps can work. Look, these flaps work. The show, like, it still works. And then like City Hunter, because it's like, you know, like this like movie, and like it's really like kind of like, you know, a bigger
visually
like
driven.
production.
It's like it has to look tight, basically. It's
and like they have, because it has like a more intricate animation, like their mouth movements are a little more complex.
Yeah.
So like that, God, there were some lines where like when we were working on it, like I was like I there were several lines where I had to retool it because of just like they were just O-shaped mouths. Like there's like
right,
like
so it had to be an O sound. Yeah,
like there's one particular line. I'm sure once like the movie's out and you can watch it, I think you'll pick up on it, but like there's specifically like 2 O-shaped mouth flaps in this like kind of like long line where it's specifically like the word "to" or like like here in this O flap.
Yeah, it's like if it doesn't match there, it's gonna be really obvious that you're watching like a dub of something that was made by other people. Yeah,
like I think the rule I like to stick with is like I try to make it look as close to it being actually like prelay animation, like actually animated to that audio as possible.
Prelay. It's always. That's the thing about dubs, is that people like say, oh, it's sub versus dub, so the dub is competing with the Japanese audio, but like technically the two are packaged together. What that product is competing with is the local animation that's in the market as well. Like people are gonna say, should I watch this American cartoon, or should I watch this anime that has an English dub?
Right.
Actually, another tangent before the tangent.
Yeah, sure.
We mentioned the uniquely shaped flaps in shows like Shinjuku Private Eyes.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think that with the rise of 3D animation, like there's more and more like fully 3D anime, whether it's like Land of the Lustrous or the stuff from Polygon Pictures, or even like that new Dragon Quest movie that like looks like it was like Pixar quality?
Yeah.
Do you think that like when those kinds of 3D anime become more mainstream, dubbing might hit a bit of a brick wall with them because the flaps are going to be like so much more detailed?
Yeah, I mean those are definitely harder because you're pretty much dubbing a live action movie in terms of like how the flaps how flaps are concerned. But like I just think of like Advent Children, where like those and like those like anime lip flaps are like pretty intricate. But like they, you know, did the best they could.
It was really weird with Advent Children because I looked at the behind the scenes feature and like I couldn't find any evidence of it being like done prelay on their end either. So like Tifa Seiyu was talking about like, oh, I was trying not to get distracted by the visuals, so that implies that it was ADR, but like I don't know. I did this whole research project about the handful of anime that had done prelay style, and one thing they sometimes do is they just get temporary actors to predetermine the animation, then they get the actual cast to dub their lines in later on. So maybe that was it.
Yeah, I mean,
but
who knows? I don't know anything about the Japanese side. So.
Okay, so back to my other tangent. Talking about the production details and how things can vary between studios and projects. You've done dubbing work at Sentai Filmworks. Yeah. And if I'm correct, Sentai Filmworks is a studio that uses the chase method, whereas for those who don't know the chase method, usually when ADR is done, the actor will get 3 beeps to cue them in, and they start their delivery on the imaginary 4th beep. The chase method is, correct me if I'm wrong, you hear the Japanese line and just kind of say it as you hear it.
Yeah, I mean that the chasing is done at like other studios too. Like Funny like has like a good like mix of like a variety of different things. Like they have like
okay.
the beeps, and then they do like you can chase. Like there's some actors who prefer to chase, and like at least like for like a lot of reacts at Funny, we'll chase them just because it's just more convenient.
Yeah, you can't really like predetermine them.
But yeah, at Sentai, like they don't have like any beeps, and like they have like a rough time code, and you just kind of roll through the whole episode, and like the Japanese is on like kind of like lower, so you can still kind of hear it but not really. And then they'll just roll through the episode, and then you'll just read it as you go. If it's like, and then like after you're done going through the episode, chasing through the whole thing, they'll go back, listen through it, and then like tweak stuff here and there depending on like if maybe you flubbed it, or maybe it doesn't fit, or like maybe like, you know, the needs a little direction. It's definitely different, and like but like it does work. I honestly like for stuff like I've worked on, there's stuff that's more like actiony, I think, and like a lot more reaction, like reacts and stuff. Like I think that's a really great method, because it keeps you like in the scene and stuff. Monologues it's hard. But
yeah
I
guess was it like that for is it Kempfer?
It was
Kempfer?
I say Camphor because, you know, that's how I've called it since I watched it in high school. But like in the show, they're saying it closer to like I think it was like the proper like German pronunciation, which is like Kempfer.
Yeah, Kempfer.
Yeah.
God, it's so weird because it's like
recording it, I had to fight my urge to say Camphor. And I was like, oh yeah, Kempfer. That's how you say it. That had a lot of dialogue because I didn't voice like the female version, so like I didn't do a lot of the action. It's like that was a little bit more difficult than like the
Do you happen to know how that came to be? How there was like a male and female voice for the main character in the dub?
I mean, I think that was just a choice on the director, like the staff's end, because like in the J it was Marina Inoue for both, and like if you're gonna have like a, you know, high school aged person, he should, you know, I just think it's just a good choice to make him sound male too. Like I don't know, I think that's just for English speaking audience, I think that just makes more sense.
But going back to the chase method, it actually is a bit closer to what the Seiyu do in Japan, because obviously they aren't hearing any voice in their earphones. Well, they might not even be wearing earphones because nothing's been recorded yet. But all they really have is just an on-screen cue saying start here and then one saying end here, and that's all they really have to go on. So
yeah.
Is there like so you mentioned the reaction, like the reaction timing, for the that's like easier to do in the chase method. Are there any other advantages that like chasing has over beeping?
I mean, it definitely keeps you like in the scene, like, and especially like I've had, it doesn't work all the time for me this way, but like I've had scenes where, you know, I've been doing the chasing method, and then like something happens and I'm reacting more like in real time instead of like seeing what's happening. It's like, oh, I need to act this reaction, but like seeing it happen in real time and reacting to it, and like, I don't know, I've had some things where like, oh, I wouldn't have been able to do that as easily if I had done it like the beep in method, and like I chased it and I was like, oh, okay, this ended up being like more like natural in a certain way. Like each method has their advantages, but I'm like for like a specific example or like
yeah, go for it.
God, I don't know. There has to be a moment in like Tada falls in love, or Tada never falls in love. Spoiler, Tada falls in love. But like in Tada never falls in love, there's like some stuff where it's like there's like a lot of high energy stuff for my character that like normally if I like try to like get into it, like I'd have to like, I don't know, energetic is like a little like, it takes me a little bit sometimes to get up to that point, but like doing the chasing method kept me kind of like in that energy zone, so it was a lot easier for me to like keep high energy for that character. I don't know if that makes any sense, but at least for me, like that. Yeah.
Is it like something you can like say that you guys were doing something at SoundCadence?
Yeah.
And you said, hold on, can I chase this instead of using the 3 beeps? Is that something that can be done? Or?
Okay. So like The 3 beeps are still there. So if you're working on a system that has 3 beeps, has the beep system, the beeps are still there when you're chasing, because that just tells you like when to come in. And chasing is just like you're doing it with the Japanese when the first time you see it. Yeah, so like there are definitely times where like, you know, it's like, oh, it's coming for this react, and it's like, oh, can I chase it? Like, sure. And then it'll just be rolling while we're like, sometimes like we would tell actors where it's like, oh, like, you know, we're gonna preview, feel free to chase it if you feel like it, because we'll be recording either way. So it gives actors the option of if they want to chase it or not, if they feel confident enough to chase it.
Yeah.
Whereas like some actors, like some directors I've worked with, they don't want you to chase. Some directors don't care. Some directors are like, just chase every react, I don't care, and just go for it. Because like it's always like, some directors feel like, you know, it's good just like to either let the actor have their first crack at it, or like, you know, have more options to work with. Like, yeah, so it's just, I don't know, it's all personal preference.
All right, so I was gonna ask what's next for you, but LA is next for you.
Yeah. So I'm currently living in LA. I got a job at Riot Games. Can't really say anything about it. Thanks. But yeah, I'm working in LA right now. I'm here for the next like several months. We'll see what happens. I don't really know what's gonna happen. But I'm just taking it as it comes. So since I'm in LA, I'm still gonna be like working on like SoundCadence stuff, because they're just like my work family, and like I work pretty closely like in there. And probably won't be like in like random funny stuff as much anymore, because I don't live in Texas now. But we'll see what happens. Like I just moved here not too long ago, so I'm still figuring some things out. So we'll I don't know. Who knows? Who knows?
Okay, any like, okay, obviously we can't talk about the things that you can't talk about, but any like convention appearances coming up? Any releases
there is
that you can talk about?
Any what? Releases?
Any like any releases that are like coming up, like DVD or Blu-ray, like anything. This is your chance to plug yourself to shill.
Oh god, what am I in? Let's see. Kemono Friends is out right now. Please right. Get it.
And Mix is still going?
Still airing, yeah. At the time of this recording, I'm still recording that. Kempfa is out now. You can get that.
You said it right.
Yeah. Jesus, what am I in? Jesus, what am I in, dude? Jesus, Nichijou's been out for a little bit, so please pick up Nichijou. We got a couple other shows with Discotheque that are coming out soon. Like there's City Hunter, Shinjuku Private Eye is the movie. Like that's, I don't know.
Galaxy Express.
Galaxy Express, Thermae Romae. I think those are all like next year or something. Keep an eye out for that. Follow Discotheque. They're cool people.
Follow Discotheque on Twitter. Follow Howard at the Howard Wang.
Yeah, that's me
on Twitter.
Yeah.
Yeah, and thank you very much for having a chat today.
Yeah, of course. Thanks for having me, man.
Okay, bye.
Bye.
Big thanks again to Howard for coming on to have a chat, as well as to our patrons including Reagan Senpai, Ryan Rodriguez, Seth Phillips, Marissa Lenti, Brandon, JR Pictures, Unknown Secret 1000, and everyone else currently supporting us. This has been the Cartoon Cipher, and until next time.
Why does Roxas look like Ventus?